Every NBA dynasty eventually falls, from the Showtime Lakers to the modern-day Warriors. No matter how powerful a team looks, downfall is inevitable. Sometimes it's an injury, sometimes it's a bad trade, and sometimes it's simply the passage of time. Today, we're breaking down the downfall of every NBA team, the shocking collapses, the mistakes, and the moments that changed franchises forever. Los Angeles Lakers. After the Kobe era, the Los Angeles Lakers are one of the most iconic teams in basketball history, with legends like Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and later Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal. The Lakers built a dynasty that seemed untouchable. But no matter how great a team is, decline always finds a way. After Shaq left in 2004, Kobe became the face of the franchise, carrying the Lakers with his scoring and determination. For a while, it worked, especially when the team won back-to-back titles in 2009 and 2010. But soon after, everything started to fall apart. The Lakers tried to chase big names, bringing in Dwight Howard and Steve Nash, but constant injuries and lack of chemistry destroyed those hopes. Bad contracts tied up their future, and year after year, the team slipped further away from relevance. Even with Kobe's greatness, the Lakers missed the playoffs multiple times, and his final years were marked more by struggle than success. His farewell game in 2016 was emotional, but it also highlighted how far the Lakers had fallen from their glory days. For fans, it was painful to see the once great Lakers stuck at the bottom of the standings. It wasn't until LeBron James arrived in 2018 that the franchise began to feel alive again. The downfall of the Lakers after Kobe shows how even the biggest teams can suffer when management makes mistakes and stars can't stay healthy. Chicago Bulls. After Michael Jordan. In the 1990s, the Chicago Bulls were the definition of dominance. Led by Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and coach Phil Jackson, the Bulls won 6 championships in 8 years and became a global symbol of basketball greatness. But what followed was one of the fastest and most shocking downfalls in NBA history. After the 1998 championship, management made the controversial decision to break up the dynasty. Jordan retired, Pippen was traded, and Jackson walked away. Instead of defending their crown, the Bulls went straight into rebuilding, and the results were brutal. The early 2000s were a nightmare for fans. The team cycled through young draft picks and new coaches, but success never came. The United Center, once the home of champions, became a place of constant losing. Hope finally returned in 2008 when the Bulls drafted Derrick Rose, a hometown hero with explosive talent. In 2011, Rose became the youngest MVP in league history, and for a moment, it looked like Chicago had found its next dynasty. But injuries changed everything. Rose's torn ACL and repeated setbacks ended the Bulls' championship dreams before they truly began. By the mid-2000s teens, the team was once again broken apart, and fans were left wondering what could have been. The downfall of the Bulls shows how quickly greatness can disappear, not only from management decisions but also from the cruel reality of injuries. From the heights of Jordan's dynasty to years of disappointment, the Bulls' story is both legendary and heartbreaking. Boston Celtics, the post-Big Three collapse. The Boston Celtics are one of the most historic franchises in basketball. Their rise in the late 2000s with the Big Three of Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Ray Allen brought a new era of glory. They won the 2008 championship and looked unstoppable, dominating the East for years. But like every dynasty, cracks began to show. Injuries hit hard. Kevin Garnett's knee, followed by struggles from an aging roster, slowly ended their title chances. In 2012, Ray Allen shocked fans by leaving for the rival Miami Heat, and the Celtics' championship window slammed shut. The real downfall came when Danny Ainge decided to trade away Garnett and Pierce to the Brooklyn Nets in 2013. While the Celtics got valuable draft picks, the team itself sank into rebuilding mode. Seasons of mediocrity followed, with fans watching the once powerful Celtics fall to the bottom half of the standings. The proud franchise that had once been home to Bill Russell and Larry Bird now relied on young prospects and patience. Although the Celtics eventually rebuilt successfully with stars like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, the collapse of the Big Three era remains a lesson in how quickly dominance can fade. For fans, the downfall was painful because it wasn't just about losing games. It was about watching legends walk away and realizing that no dynasty lasts forever. Golden State Warriors, from dynasty to struggle. The Golden State Warriors became a global sensation in the mid-2010s. With Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and later Kevin Durant, they created one of the most powerful dynasties in NBA history. From 2015 to 2019, the Warriors reached 5 straight finals and won 3 championships. Their fast-paced style, three-point shooting, and star power changed the game forever. But their rise was so fast that their downfall felt even more shocking. It began in the 2019 finals. Kevin Durant tore his Achilles, and Klay Thompson tore his ACL. Suddenly, the team that looked unbeatable was broken. Durant left for Brooklyn, and the Warriors were left with Curry and Draymond trying to hold things together. The 2019-20 season was disastrous. Curry broke his hand, Klay missed the entire year, and the Warriors finished with the worst record in the league. Just 1 year after being a dynasty, they were at the bottom. Although the team bounced back to win again in 2022, the struggles returned quickly. Injuries, aging stars, and constant drama with Draymond Green began to weigh down the team. The once invincible Warriors started to look vulnerable, and their dynasty window grew smaller every season. For fans, the downfall of the Warriors is proof of how fragile greatness can be. One injury, one departure, and everything changes. Miami Heat. After the LeBron era. The Miami Heat's rise to power in 2010 was one of the most dramatic moments in NBA history. When LeBron James, Dwyane Wade, and Chris Bosh teamed up, the Heatleys were born. They became the villains of the NBA, but also the most feared team. From 2011 to 2014, the Heat reached 4 straight finals and won 2 championships. The Big Three era was electric, but it didn't last forever. In 2014, LeBron shocked the world by leaving Miami to return to Cleveland. Suddenly, the Heat went from championship favorites to a team scrambling to survive. Wade was aging, Bosh faced life-threatening health issues, and the roster was filled with role players instead of stars. The Heat missed the playoffs in 2015, and even when they returned, they were no longer a serious contender. For a franchise that had just dominated the league, the fall was dramatic. Fans in Miami struggled to accept life after LeBron. Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra tried to rebuild with young talent, but the championship aura was gone. It wasn't until Jimmy Butler arrived years later that the Heat found new life, making surprise finals runs in 2020 and 2023. Still, the downfall after the Big Three showed just how much a single player's decision can change everything. Dallas Mavericks. After the Dirk era, the Mavericks had reached the peak of their success, winning a championship and becoming one of the most respected teams in the league. But after the legendary scorer's peak years, the team faced the difficult task of maintaining that high level. Aging veterans gradually retired or left, leaving the roster inexperienced and inconsistent. Management tried to rebuild through trades and draft picks, but the new players often lacked the chemistry and leadership needed to compete. Injuries to key contributors further weakened the team, causing seasons of disappointment and missed playoffs. The franchise struggled to regain its identity while fans watched the glory of the past slowly fade. Even with the gradual development of young talent, replacing the legacy of the championship era proved challenging. The Mavericks story highlights the difficulty of transitioning from a dynasty led by one superstar to a sustainable, competitive team. Patience, careful planning, and gradual talent development became necessary for the franchise to rebuild effectively. Houston Rockets. From MVPs to mediocrity. The Rockets once stood as one of the most dominant teams in the Western Conference. A dynamic duo led the team to multiple playoff appearances, thrilling fans with fast-paced offense and sharp shooting. At their peak, the franchise was seen as a serious championship contender, with high expectations every season. However, cracks began to appear in the team's foundation. Management made ambitious moves to strengthen the roster, but many trades brought in unproven talent while experienced players who had provided stability were lost. Internal conflicts also started to emerge, creating tension both on and off the court. Injuries played a cruel role in the team's downfall. Key contributors were sidelined during crucial playoff runs, ending hopes of deep postseason journeys. Without their full roster, the team's rhythm was disrupted, confidence eroded, and reliance on a few stars became a weakness. Seasons of inconsistency and missed opportunities soon became the new reality. The once dominant team struggled to compete with emerging rivals, and fans watched as the franchise slipped from elite contender to mediocrity. Efforts to rebuild through young talent and draft picks were slow to produce results, leaving the team searching for a clear identity. Over time, careful planning and strategic acquisitions slowly restored competitiveness. Developing new talent and cultivating team chemistry helped the team regain footing, but the fall of the Rockets remains a stark reminder. Even teams with MVP-level talent can face long periods of struggle when injuries, internal issues, and management decisions misalign. Excellence in the NBA demands more than star power. It requires cohesion, health, and vision. New York Knicks, lost in the spotlight. The New York Knicks are one of the most famous and historic franchises in the NBA. Once a team that regularly competed for championships and thrilled fans at Madison Square Garden, the Knicks built a legacy filled with memorable moments and legendary players. But even the brightest franchises can struggle when leadership decisions go wrong. After a few playoff appearances in the late 1990s and early 2000s, the Knicks began to face instability. Management decisions, poor draft choices, and unsuccessful trades slowly eroded the team's competitiveness, leaving fans frustrated and disappointed. Attempts to sign high-profile free agents often failed to bring the desired success. The roster lacked the cohesion and leadership needed to compete at the highest level. Injuries and internal conflicts added to the challenges, causing seasons of underperformance and early playoff exits. The team's struggles became a regular story, and the bright lights of New York couldn't mask the repeated disappointments. Even when talented young players emerged, inconsistency plagued the franchise. Fans hoped for a return to glory, but each season brought new setbacks. The Knicks' story became one of lost opportunities. A historic team that struggled to adapt to the modern NBA while trying to maintain its identity and legacy. For fans, watching the Knicks descend from championship contender to a team fighting for relevance was painful. The franchise's journey illustrates how even the most iconic teams can falter when planning, patience, and leadership are missing. Rebuilding a proud legacy takes time, strategy, and a little luck, and for the Knicks, that journey is still ongoing. Toronto Raptors. From champions to rebuilding. The Toronto Raptors reached the pinnacle of success in 2019, capturing their first-ever NBA championship and becoming a powerhouse in the Eastern Conference. The city celebrated, fans rejoiced, and the team seemed unstoppable. But as with every dynasty, sustaining greatness proved far more difficult than achieving it. Key contributors left through free agency, leaving gaps in leadership, scoring, and defensive stability. Without their full roster of stars, the Raptors struggled to maintain consistency, and injuries only compounded the problem. The team attempted to rebuild, combining young talent with experienced role players, but chemistry took time to develop. Seasons that followed were filled with ups and downs, playoff hopes dashed, and expectations repeatedly unmet. Even with strategic draft picks and smart trades, the Raptors couldn't replicate the magic of their championship run immediately. The journey was slow, and fans had to endure moments of frustration and disappointment, realizing that success in the NBA is never guaranteed, no matter how talented a team may be. Gradually, the franchise began to regain competitiveness, relying on new stars and emerging talent to create a fresh identity. The Raptors' story demonstrates that even historic success can be fragile, and that patience, planning, and resilience are essential to long-term achievement. Winning a championship is only the beginning. Sustaining it requires vision, adaptability, and a bit of luck. Philadelphia 76ers, the fall after rebuild. The Philadelphia 76ers spent years carefully rebuilding, collecting young talent and draft picks with the hope of creating a championship contender. For fans, the process promised a bright future, but success did not come quickly. Injuries and inconsistency plagued the developing roster, turning initial optimism into frustration. High expectations clashed with reality as playoff disappointments and early exits became recurring stories. Management tried to accelerate success with trades and free agent signings, but the results were often underwhelming. Promising talent needed time to develop, and veterans brought stability but not the championship-level impact required. Each season highlighted the challenges of sustaining a post-rebuild team in a competitive league, where other franchises were also improving. Despite the setbacks, the 76ers gradually began to regain credibility as new stars emerged and team chemistry improved. Playoff appearances became more frequent, signaling that the franchise was finally on the right track. The team's journey after years of rebuilding illustrates the delicate balance between patience and performance, showing that even well-planned strategies can face setbacks. For fans, the story is both a lesson in perseverance and a reminder that building lasting success requires careful vision, resilience, and a little luck. Oklahoma City Thunder. After the Durant-Westbrook era, the Oklahoma City Thunder were once one of the most electrifying teams in the NBA, driven by a superstar duo that could dominate any opponent. Their combination of scoring, athleticism, and playmaking made them a constant threat in the Western Conference. Fans filled arenas in anticipation of playoff matchups, and the team became known for thrilling performances that could turn any season into a memorable run. However, after their foundational stars left, the franchise faced a sudden and challenging transition. The roster, once stacked with talent, now relied heavily on young, unproven players. Draft picks brought hope, but required years of development before producing reliable contributors. Trades aimed at strengthening the team sometimes failed to deliver immediate results, leaving gaps in leadership and consistency. The absence of their former stars created a vacuum on and off the court, and the team struggled to maintain relevance amidst fierce competition. Seasons of inconsistency followed, marked by missed playoff opportunities and early exits. The pressure to develop a new core tested both management and fans, while injuries and lack of experience added to the challenge. Gradually, careful drafting and the emergence of young talent restored competitiveness, but the shadow of the previous era lingered. The Thunder's story is a reminder that even the most promising teams can fall into mediocrity without their cornerstone players, and that rebuilding requires patience, strategy, and vision. Indiana Pacers. From contender to rebuilding. The Indiana Pacers were once a respected franchise in the Eastern Conference, regularly competing for playoff positions and sometimes challenging for championships. A mix of seasoned veterans and promising young talent created balance, and fans had reason to believe in sustained success. However, over time, injuries to key contributors disrupted the team's rhythm, and the roster struggled to maintain consistency across multiple seasons. Management attempted to preserve competitiveness through trades and free agent acquisitions, but many moves failed to yield the desired results. Young players showed potential, yet turning promise into consistent performance proved difficult. Early playoff exits became increasingly common, and the team's reputation as a contender began to fade. Frustration grew among fans, who longed for the stability and success of previous years. As seasons passed, rebuilding became inevitable. The Pacers focused on drafting wisely and developing a new core of talent. Patience and strategic planning gradually restored competitiveness, but the journey highlighted the fragile nature of NBA success. Even franchises with strong histories can fall into mediocrity if injuries, roster decisions, and timing do not align. The Pacers' story demonstrates that building a contender requires careful vision, long-term planning, and resilience against setbacks. Milwaukee Bucks. Before the Giannis era, the Milwaukee Bucks have a rich history, but before the rise of their current superstar, the franchise experienced long stretches of struggle. Talented players arrived with potential, yet inconsistent management and injuries often prevented sustained success. Seasons were marked by underperformance, sporadic playoff appearances, and early exits that frustrated fans eager for consistent competitiveness. Drafting and trading became essential strategies, but results were uneven. While some young talent showed flashes of brilliance, the roster lacked cohesion and leadership capable of elevating the team to championship contention. Even strategic acquisitions sometimes failed to produce immediate success, leaving the franchise to navigate extended periods of mediocrity. Fans had to endure years of hope and disappointment, witnessing moments of promise quickly fade. The Bucks' story before the modern era illustrates how difficult it can be to build and maintain a competitive team without stability, vision, and star power. Gradual development, patience, and strategic planning eventually set the stage for the franchise's resurgence. But the pre-superstar years remain a reminder of the fragile nature of success in professional basketball. Utah Jazz. After the Stockton-Malone era, the Utah Jazz dominated the NBA for years with a legendary duo, consistently reaching the playoffs and competing for championships. But after those iconic players retired, the franchise faced a major decline. The roster struggled to find identity, as young players were suddenly expected to fill leadership roles. Management attempted to rebuild through draft picks, trades, and player development, But success was slow to come. Injuries and early playoff exits became common, frustrating fans who had grown accustomed to the Jazz's sustained excellence. Efforts to sign high-profile players often failed to provide the immediate impact needed to compete at the top. Gradually, the team focused on cultivating new talent and building chemistry, slowly regaining relevance in a highly competitive league. The story of the Jazz after their peak era demonstrates the difficulty of transitioning from sustained success to a new competitive identity. Even historically respected franchises can struggle to maintain excellence when foundational stars depart, and rebuilding requires vision, patience, and a willingness to adapt. Fans had to accept that long-term planning and gradual growth were necessary to restore competitiveness and re-establish the team's legacy. Denver Nuggets. The pre-Jokic struggles. Before the rise of their current superstar, the Denver Nuggets spent years navigating frustration, inconsistency, and missed opportunities. Talented players arrived with potential, but injuries, trades, and management missteps often prevented the team from achieving lasting success. Early playoff exits became routine, and fans grew weary of seasons that showed flashes of hope but rarely delivered results. Efforts to rebuild included developing young prospects and executing strategic trades, but the roster often lacked cohesion. Even talented individuals could not replicate the consistency required to compete in a strong Western Conference. The team needed stability, vision, and leadership to turn potential into sustained success. Despite setbacks, the Nuggets gradually began to find their identity through patient planning, talent development, and strategic acquisitions. The franchise's pre-superstar struggles illustrate how even promising teams can endure extended periods of mediocrity without the combination of talent, chemistry, and long-term planning. These years laid the foundation for the team's modern resurgence, showing that patience, resilience, and careful management are essential to achieving lasting success in the NBA. Charlotte Hornets. From playoff hope to struggle. The Charlotte Hornets have long been a team full of potential, thrilling fans with bursts of talent and athleticism. In their early years, the franchise showed glimpses of becoming a serious contender, boasting exciting young players and dynamic scoring. But sustaining success proved elusive. Seasons filled with promise often ended in disappointment, as injuries and inconsistent performances undermined progress. Management attempted to construct a winning roster through trades, draft picks, and free agent signings, yet the results were inconsistent. Young players showed flashes of brilliance but struggled to maintain consistency under pressure. Playoff appearances were sporadic, and when they did reach the postseason, the team often faced early exits. The Hornets' inability to retain key talent and their struggles with chemistry slowed any long-term progress. As seasons passed, rebuilding became inevitable. The franchise focused on drafting wisely and developing talent, learning from past missteps. Patience and strategic vision gradually helped the team regain competitiveness, but the journey highlighted how fragile hope can be for teams lacking stability and veteran leadership. The Hornets' story illustrates that even teams with talent and fan enthusiasm can struggle for years without a strong foundation and consistent planning. Memphis Grizzlies. After the grit and grind era. The Memphis Grizzlies were once celebrated for their grit and grind era, a team built on defense, toughness, and relentless effort. This identity brought them consistent playoff appearances and respect across the league. But once the core players aged or departed, the Grizzlies struggled to maintain the same level of competitiveness. Young players stepped into bigger roles, but the team lacked the leadership and experience needed to sustain success. Trades and draft picks brought hope, yet consistency was elusive. Injuries to emerging stars further hindered progress, leaving seasons marked by underperformance and missed opportunities. The franchise's attempts to rebuild required patience, as fans watched years of rebuilding and adaptation. Gradually, management focused on developing young talent and creating a new identity, combining athleticism with strategy. The Grizzlies' story demonstrates the difficulty of transitioning from a celebrated era to rebuilding, even with dedicated players and a passionate fan base. Maintaining success requires not only talent, but also vision, continuity, and resilience. The lessons of Memphis show that long-term planning is essential for teams that aspire to move from past glory to sustained excellence in the NBA. New Orleans Pelicans. From potential to rebuilding. The New Orleans Pelicans have been a franchise defined by promise, with talented young players and flashes of brilliance capturing fans' imagination. However, injuries, inconsistent management, and the departure of key stars have repeatedly derailed the team's progress. Seasons that began with high expectations often ended in frustration, as the roster struggled to find chemistry and stability. The Pelicans attempted to rebuild through draft picks, trades, and careful development of young talent, but results took time. Even highly talented individuals could not consistently elevate the team to playoff contention. Early exits and missed opportunities became the norm, emphasizing the difficulty of sustaining success in a competitive league. Over time, careful planning and patience began to restore competitiveness. The franchise gradually cultivated a core of young stars, combining skill with leadership and experience. The Pelicans' story highlights the challenges of transitioning from potential to consistent success and illustrates that talent alone is never enough. Stability, vision, and resilience are essential to building a lasting contender. Washington Wizards, from championship contender to struggle. The Washington Wizards have experienced cycles of hope and disappointment over the decades. Once a competitive team capable of making deep playoff runs, the franchise has faced challenges maintaining that status. Injuries, aging stars, and inconsistent management decisions repeatedly disrupted the team's rhythm and performance. Attempts to rebuild often included trades and draft picks aimed at creating a balanced roster. Yet young players required development, and the team's inconsistency led to early playoff exits and seasons of underperformance. Fans watched as moments of promise faded, leaving the Wizards searching for a clear identity and long-term direction. Over time, management focused on developing a stable core, combining youth with experience. Patience, planning, and careful talent development slowly restored competitiveness, but the team's struggles after championship contention emphasized the fragile nature of success in the NBA. Even talented rosters can fall into mediocrity without cohesion, leadership, and strategic vision. Minnesota Timberwolves. After the Kevin Garnett era, the Minnesota Timberwolves built much of their early success around a superstar whose dominance defined an era. Once the team had a clear identity and playoff aspirations, but after the departure of their cornerstone, the Timberwolves struggled to maintain relevance. Young players were expected to step up, yet the roster lacked cohesion, and management decisions often failed to produce immediate results. Injuries, inconsistent draft picks, and unsuccessful trades prevented the team from competing consistently in the Western Conference. Early playoff exits and seasons of underperformance became the new normal. Despite flashes of individual talent, the Timberwolves were unable to replicate the stability and success of the Garnett era. Rebuilding required patience and a focus on developing young talent while creating a new identity. Gradually, the team began to regain competitiveness, but the lessons of the past lingered. The Timberwolves' story demonstrates how even franchises with a historic superstar can face prolonged periods of struggle and emphasizes that vision, strategy, and resilience are key to long-term success. If you like NBA documentary videos, don't forget to like our video and subscribe to the channel to stay tuned.